The night everything changed, I always thought horror was something that lived in movies. In the pages of books, or in the stories people told to scare each other late at night. I never imagined it could crawl into my reality, sink its claws into me, and never let go. But that night, the night everything changed, I realized horror is very real, and once it finds you, there's no escape. It started like any other ordinary evening. I was alone at home. My parents had gone to visit relatives and my friends were busy, so I had the house to myself. Normally, I loved nights like that. I could stay up late, watch whatever I wanted, maybe play some music too loud without anyone complaining. Freedom. But that night felt different. The air in the house carried a strange heaviness, like the silence itself had weight. Even though all the windows were shut, a faint chill slipped through the rooms, brushing against my skin. I ignored it at first, convincing myself it was nothing. Around 11 p.m., I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the couch scrolling through my phone. The dim yellow light of the lamp beside me cast long shadows across the room. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard it. Sound, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Footsteps. I froze, my mug halfway to my lips. At first, I thought it might be from outside, maybe someone passing by on the street. But no, the sound was inside. Slow, deliberate, creaking footsteps, moving across the wooden floor upstairs. I live in a 2-story house, and that night I knew for certain I was alone. I put the cup down, my hands trembling just slightly. My mind raced for a rational explanation. Maybe I'd left a window open upstairs, and the wind was moving something around. Maybe the wood was just settling. That's what people always say, right? Old houses make noises, but these weren't random creaks. They were steady. One step after another, moving closer. My heart started pounding in my ears. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy flashlight from the drawer by the couch. The metal felt cold and solid in my hand, but it did little to calm the fear twisting inside me. I stood at the bottom of the staircase, staring into the darkness above. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking slightly. No answer, just silence. I could swear the floorboards groaned louder this time, like whoever or whatever was up there wanted me to know they were real. I forced myself to move, one step at a time, climbing the staircase. The flashlight beam shook as I lifted it, cutting through the thick darkness. Every shadow looked alive. Every corner seemed to shift just out of sight. When I reached the landing, the air grew colder. My breath came out in faint white clouds. It wasn't possible it wasn't winter and the heater was on. Yet the hallway ahead felt like walking into a freezer. The footsteps had stopped. That silence was worse than the noise. I checked my parents' bedroom, empty. My room, nothing. Guest room, no one. One by one, I pushed open the doors, the flashlight sweeping across walls and furniture, but finding nothing unusual. The whole floor was empty. At least that's what I thought. Just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, I heard it again. Not footsteps this time. A whisper, low, inhuman. Like words stretched and torn into sounds my ears weren't meant to hear. It came from the last door at the end of the hall. Storage room. I hadn't opened it yet. My hand tightened around the flashlight. My throat was dry, but I swallowed hard, forcing myself to take slow steps forward. The whispering grew louder, almost urgent, as if it knew I was coming. I reached for the knob, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it would burst. My fingers touched the cold metal, and at that exact moment, the whisper stopped. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. I stood there, frozen, torn between running back downstairs or throwing the door open. And then, slowly, so slowly, the knob began to turn on its own. Footsteps in the empty hall. I couldn't breathe. My eyes locked onto that pale, smiling face reflected in the window, and every muscle in my body screamed at me to look away. But I couldn't. The storm outside lit up the sky for a brief moment, and in that flash I saw the figure clearly. It wasn't standing outside the window, no. It was standing inside my room behind me. I spun around so fast that I nearly fell out of bed, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. But when I turned, there was nothing there. Just the empty shadows of my room, stretching long and thin with each flicker of lightning. I tried to calm myself, whispering, "You're imagining it. You're imagining it." But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something was here with me. The silence stretched again, thick and suffocating. And then it returned the footsteps. This time, they weren't outside my door. They were in the hallway, moving slowly, dragging, as if whoever or whatever it was had all the time in the world. Step. Creak. Step. Creak. I sat frozen on the bed, listening as the sound moved further down the hall. For a split second, I thought maybe it was leaving. Maybe I was safe. But then, the steps stopped. Right outside my parents' bedroom. Didn't know why, but the thought of it entering that room made my skin crawl. It wasn't even about protecting anything. There was nothing inside. No one but me in this house. But still, a sickening fear grew in my chest, as if something horrible would happen if I let it go in there. I had to know. Summoning every ounce of courage I didn't have, I slowly unlocked my door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed like a gunshot in the silence. I peeked out into the hall. The air was colder here, unnaturally so, like I had stepped into a freezer. My breath came out in faint white clouds as I whispered into the dark. "Who's there?" Again, no answer, just silence. The frames along the hallway wall were still tilted, some now turned completely upside down, as if mocking me. The storm outside boomed again, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move at the end of the hall. My legs were shaking as I stepped out, the wooden floor groaning under my weight. I crept toward my parents' room. Each step slower than the last, my ears straining for the sound of breathing or movement, anything to tell me I wasn't completely insane. When I reached the door, I saw it was wide open. That was strange. My parents always kept their room locked when they were away. Always. Swallowing hard, I pushed the door open a little more and stepped inside. The smell hit me first, something old, rotten, like damp earth mixed with rust. My stomach turned instantly. The room was pitch dark, but I could feel the presence. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, standing in the corner, watching. "Please," I whispered without even realizing. "Leave me alone." The storm gave me one small mercy. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the room for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, I saw it. A tall figure, impossibly thin, its head tilted to one side like a broken doll. Its mouth stretched into a grin that looked carved, not natural, and its hollow eyes stared directly into mine. Before I could even scream, the lights went out, not just in the room, the whole house. Pitch black. I stumbled back into the hallway, panic clawing at my throat. That's when I heard it again. Step, creak, step, creak. But this time it wasn't moving away. It was coming toward me. And in that instant, I knew I had made a terrible mistake by opening that door. The face in the window, the darkness swallowed me whole. No lights, no flicker of storm outside, just the suffocating, pitch-black silence of the house. My breath came in short gasps, each one too loud, too shaky, as if the thing in the hallway could hear every sound I made. And then it came again. Step, creak, step, creak, closer this time. Heavy, deliberate, patient. My instincts screamed at me to run, to lock myself back in my room, but my legs wouldn't obey. It felt like I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the weight of unseen eyes on me. "Please," I whispered again, voice trembling. "Just go away." The footsteps stopped. I thought maybe it had worked, maybe it had listened. But then I heard something else. A soft tapping. Tap. Tap. It was coming from the end of the hallway, near the living room. My heart thudded painfully against my chest as I realized what it was. The window. Something was tapping on the glass. Every nerve in my body screamed at me not to go, not to look, but curiosity, the kind born of pure terror, pushed me forward. I crept down the hall, one shaky step at a time, every floorboard beneath me betraying me with loud creaks. The tapping grew louder, faster, like impatient fingers drumming on the glass. When I finally reached the living room, lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating the space for just a moment. And that's when I saw it. A face. Pressed against the window. It was pale, almost gray, with skin so tight against the skull it looked stretched like parchment over bone. Its mouth was impossibly wide, lips curled upward into that same carved smile I had seen before. Its hollow eyes bore into me with such intensity, I felt the strength drain from my body. I staggered back, hitting the wall behind me. The face didn't move. It just stayed there, pressed against the glass, grinning. My mind raced. It couldn't be outside. The storm was raging, the wind howling, and yet there was no rain on the glass where the face was pressed. Everything else was dripping wet, but that part of the window was dry, like the figure didn't belong to this world at all. And then, it did something that froze me completely. It whispered my name. I couldn't hear it through the glass, but I felt it, like the sound crawled directly into my head. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The whisper wasn't in the room, it was inside me. I bolted for the hallway, desperate to escape, but as I turned back, the face was gone. The window was empty. Relief washed over me for a second, but then my eyes adjusted to the dark, and that's when I realized. The reflection in the glass hadn't vanished. It had moved. I saw it again standing behind me, reflected in the window. Tall, twisted, grinning. I spun around, fists clenched, ready to fight or scream. I didn't know which, but there was nothing there, just the empty hallway stretching back to my bedroom. The storm outside raged louder, thunder shaking the house, and over that chaos I heard it again. The footsteps, only this time, they weren't in the hall. They were inside my room, my sanctuary. The one place I thought I could hide. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see. But as I crept closer, my hand trembling on the doorknob, I realized the truth. I wasn't alone in this house anymore. Something had invited itself in. It wasn't leaving. When the lights went out, my hand hovered over the doorknob to my room, trembling so hard I could hear the faint click of the metal as my fingers brushed it. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of the house, to leave everything behind. But my legs wouldn't move. I needed to know what was inside. The storm outside crackled, lightning streaking across the sky. For a split second, the hallway lit up, and in that flash, I thought I saw a shadow slip under the crack of my bedroom door. Something was waiting for me inside. I swallowed hard and twisted the knob. The door creaked open slowly, louder than it had ever sounded before. The darkness inside was so thick, it felt alive, pressing against me, daring me to step inside. I took one step forward, and the house groaned around me, as if it too didn't want me entering. I reached for the switch on the wall, flicked at nothing. The power was still out. That's when I remembered my flashlight was still on my nightstand where I had left it earlier. If I could just get to it, maybe I'd feel safer. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and turned on the dim flashlight, its weak beam cutting a small circle into the dark. I stepped inside. The room was cold, too cold. My breath fogged in front of me as I scanned the beam across the walls, the ceiling, the corners. Everything looked the same, my bed, my desk, the mess of clothes on the floor. But something felt wrong. The air was heavy, watching. I moved toward the nightstand, but before I could reach it, the phone in my hand flickered, the screen glitching. The light sputtered once, twice, then went completely black. I was plunged into absolute darkness. That's when I heard it. Breathing, not mine. Deeper, slower, coming from the far side of the room. I froze, straining my ears. My own heart was pounding so hard I thought it would drown everything else out. But no, it was there. The sound of air dragging in and out, rasping, almost wet. I forced myself to take one shaky step toward the nightstand. My hand fumbled blindly, searching. My fingers finally brushed against cold metal, the flashlight. Relief surged through me as I gripped it and switched it on. The beam cut through the dark and landed on the corner of the room. There it was. Tall, thin, its head cocked at an unnatural angle, mouth stretched into that grotesque smile. Its hollow eyes reflected the light like glass, staring into me. I stumbled back, the flashlight shaking in my hand. For a moment, I thought it would rush at me, claw me, drag me into the shadows. But it didn't move. It just stood there, watching. My shaking hands finally found the strength to slam the door shut. I twisted the lock and backed against the opposite wall, the flashlight beam darting around the room in panic. But when I looked back at the corner, it was gone. The room was empty again, or so I thought. A soft sound echoed in the silence. Not footsteps this time, not scratching. Laughter low, guttural. Like something that hadn't laughed in centuries was trying to remember how. The light flickered again. My heart hammered as I fought to keep it steady, praying it wouldn't die on me. I turned slowly, every nerve in my body screaming. And there it was, standing by the window now, its grin wider than before, its hand pressed against the glass. Lightning flashed outside, and the entire room was illuminated in a sickly white glow. For a split second, I saw its reflection in the glass only this time. The reflection wasn't the same. The figure in the room was still, but the reflection in the window, it was moving, smiling wider, tilting its head farther, mocking me, and then darkness. The flashlight died. I was left in complete blackness, alone with something that wasn't supposed to exist. That was the moment I realized the storm wasn't what I should be afraid of. It was what had come with it. Whispers from the shadows. The darkness was alive. I could feel it pressing against me from all sides, suffocating like the air itself had weight. My flashlight was dead, my phone useless. The storm outside had swallowed every source of light, leaving me stranded in blackness that seemed endless. Then came the whispers. At first I thought it was the wind whistling through the cracks of the house, but no, this was different. The voices were inside the room with me, low, raspy, almost human. They didn't speak in sentences, just fragments, hisses, chants. Closer, closer, we see you. Don't hide. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The whispers weren't coming from outside. They were worming their way into my head. My chest tightened, as if invisible fingers were wrapping around my throat, squeezing. Stop! I screamed into the dark. My own voice cracked, pitiful and weak. The whispers only grew louder. I staggered backward, bumping into the edge of my desk. Papers scattered across the floor, rustling in the silence like dry leaves. That's when I felt it the cold. A rush of icy air brushed against my neck as though someone had leaned in close enough to breathe on me. My body locked in place, fear rooting me where I stood. I turned my head slowly. Nothing. Just the void of the room. Then another whisper. This one so close it felt like it came from inside my ear. Behind you. My blood ran cold. I spun around, raising my dead flashlight like a weapon, but of course it was useless. My beam of light was gone, and all I had was darkness. Darkness and the faint sound of something shifting, moving across the floor. Step. Drag. Step. It wasn't walking. It was crawling. I backed up until I felt my bed against my legs. My breathing was ragged, each inhale sharp and painful. This isn't real, I whispered to myself. This isn't real. You're dreaming. Wake up. Wake up. But then lightning split the sky outside, flooding the room with a violent flash of white. And I saw it. Crawling out from beneath my bed. Its limbs were too long, bending the wrong way, its joints cracking as it pulled itself forward. The grin on its face stretched wider, impossibly wide, like its skin was tearing at the edges of its mouth. I screamed and scrambled onto the mattress, pressing myself against the headboard like a cornered animal. The figure didn't rush at me. It didn't need to. It just crawled up the side of the bed and perched at the foot of it, tilting its head in that broken doll way, watching me. And then the whispers changed. They weren't random anymore. They were synchronized. Dozens of voices, all chanting the same words. My name. Over and over. My name filling the room, filling my skull, until I thought my head would split open. Stop it, I shouted, my voice shaking, tears streaming down my face. The chanting stopped. Silence. For a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I had fought it off somehow. But then, in that heavy silence, I heard a sound that shattered me completely. It laughed. Not loud, not wild, but a quiet, mocking laugh that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then it spoke. Not in whispers this time, not in fragments. Clear, direct, you can't escape me. My stomach dropped. The room felt like it was spinning, my vision swimming with shadows that weren't there before. I grabbed the dead flashlight and hurled it at the figure. It hit the foot of the bed with a dull thud and passed right through it. The figure dissolved like smoke, curling into the air. For one heart-stopping second, I thought it was gone. But then I felt it again, cold fingers brushing against my ankle. I jerked my legs up onto the bed, curling into myself, my eyes darting wildly around the room. There was nothing to see, and yet I could feel it, moving under the blankets, sliding across the mattress, pressing closer. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. All I could do was listen as the whispers returned softer, now almost gentle, like a lullaby meant to pull me deeper into the dark. And that was when I realized the truth. This thing wasn't just haunting the house, it was haunting me. The room that shouldn't exist, I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it lurking just beyond the dark, whispering in that sickly voice that dug straight into my bones. I lay frozen on the bed, waiting for dawn, praying the light would burn it away. But dawn never came. When I finally glanced at the clock on my nightstand, I realized the hands hadn't moved. 3:15 a.m., the same time it had been when everything started. The storm outside still raged as though time itself was stuck in this endless night. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. The whispers, the cold, the invisible hands, they were closing in on me. I needed to get out, even if it meant running into the storm. Gathering what little courage I had left, I slid off the bed and gripped the doorknob. It was ice cold, like I was holding onto metal left outside in winter. I turned it anyway and pushed the door open. The hallway was darker than before. My phone had died hours ago, leaving me with nothing but the faint flashes of lightning seeping through the windows. The tilted picture frames were all gone, nova-nished into the walls as if they had never existed. But something else was there. At the very end of the hall, past my parents' bedroom, there was a door that shouldn't exist. I knew this house better than anyone. That wall had always been solid, nothing but plaster and wood. But now there it was, tall narrow door painted black, blending almost seamlessly into the wall, as though it had been waiting for me all along. My chest tightened. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn around and pretend I had never seen it. But the whispers wouldn't let me. Open it. Open it. They surrounded me, circling, coaxing, daring. My legs moved on their own, dragging me down the hall toward that impossible door. Each step felt heavier, as though the air itself thickened the closer I got. When I reached it, I placed my hand on the knob. It wasn't cold this time. It was warm, beating like a pulse beneath my palm. I swallowed hard and twisted. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into complete blackness. The smell hit me instantly, damp earth, mold, and something metallic. Something like blood. I knew I shouldn't go down there. Every instinct in my body screamed against it. But the whispers pushed harder, almost gleeful now. Down, down, see what waits. I stepped onto the first stair. The wood groaned under my weight. Then another. And another. The deeper I went, the colder it became, until I could see faint puffs of white escaping my lips with every breath. After what felt like forever, I reached the bottom. My foot touched solid ground, not wood, but stone. I lifted my head and froze. The room before me wasn't a basement, wasn't part of the house at all. It was a cavernous space, walls made of rough stone dripping with moisture. Strange markings covered every surface, symbols etched deep into the rock, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. And in the center of the room, chair, an old wooden chair, bound with chains. Sitting in it? No, not sitting. Slumped. A figure. Its head hung low, hair matted and wet, long strands covering its face. The chains rattled slightly, though it wasn't moving. I stepped back, my stomach twisting. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. My gaze stayed locked on the figure, frozen in horror. Then slowly it lifted its head. The hair slid away from its face, and I saw myself, pale, hollow-eyed. That same grotesque smile carved across my mouth. The whispers erupted all at once, deafening, filling the cavern until I thought my skull would split apart. You belong here. You are always ours. Sit down. The chains on the chair rattled louder, as if waiting for me. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on the stone floor. My body hit the wall, knocking the air out of me. And when I looked up again, the figure in the chair was gone. But the chair wasn't empty. Something unseen sat in it now, laughing softly as the glowing symbols pulsed brighter around me. And in that moment I realized the truth. That door hadn't just led to another room. It had led to its world. The cavern pulsed around me, the symbols on the walls glowing like veins of fire, throbbing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The chair in the center creaked softly, though nothing visible sat in it anymore. The weight of something unseen pressed against me, heavy and suffocating, like the entire room was leaning in closer. I needed to get out now. I turned toward the staircase, but it was gone. The black door, the steps leading back up to my hallway, vanished. In their place was only more stone, damp and endless. The whispers closed in, circling me like vultures. No escape. Stay forever. My chest tightened. I stumbled backward, my hands brushing against the cold walls, searching desperately for a crack, a way out, anything. My fingers scraped against one of the glowing carvings, and suddenly the whispers stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse than the voices, and then something grabbed my ankle. I screamed and kicked, but the grip was impossibly strong, icy cold, burning like fire at the same time. I've shown my dying phone screen down for just a second, and what I saw made my blood run cold. A hand, but not human. Its fingers were long and thin, jointed too many times, nails sharp like claws. Its gray skin stretched so tightly over bone it looked ready to tear. It wasn't attached to a body. It was just an arm, crawling out of the stone floor like the cavern itself had birthed it. I kicked again, harder this time, and managed to break free, stumbling back toward the center of the room. But that was worse, because now I could see them. Dozens of hands, pushing out of the walls, the floor, the ceiling, reaching, grasping, clawing for me. The chair rattled again, chains snapping taut, and suddenly the whispers returned, louder than ever. Sit, yours. The hands surged toward me all at once. They grabbed my arms, my legs, my clothes, dragging me down to the stone floor. I kicked, I screamed, I clawed at the ground, but it was useless. Their grip was like iron, pulling me closer and closer to the chair. No. Let me go, I cried, my voice cracking with terror. But my screams only seemed to amuse them. The whispers turned to laughter, echoing around the cavern, bouncing off the stone until it felt like a crowd was mocking me. The figure appeared again, the one that looked like me. It stepped out of the shadows, its movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Its hollow eyes locked on mine, its smile stretching impossibly wide. "You were never free," it said in my voice. I thrashed against the hands, tears streaming down my face. But the more I fought, the harder they pulled. Inch by inch, they dragged me toward the chair. My doppelganger stood beside it, gesturing for me to sit. Its grin splitting wider until the skin at the corners of its mouth tore, oozing black. "Please," I begged. "I don't belong here." The figure tilted its head. "But you do." The chains on the chair opened, rattling like they were alive, waiting for me. The hands lifted me off the ground, dragging me higher, lowering me toward the seat. My body shook violently, my nails clawing at the stone, leaving bloody streaks, but nothing stopped them. The moment my back touched the chair, the chains snapped shut around my wrists and ankles. Pain shot through me as the iron dug into my skin.
I screamed,
struggling, but the chair held me fast. The whispers rose to a deafening roar, chanting, laughing, mocking. My doppelganger leaned down until its face was inches from mine. "This is where you've always belonged," it whispered. And then it vanished. The hands melted back into the stone. The cavern fell silent again, except for the rattling chains that now held me captive. I pulled, I twisted, I begged, but nothing loosened their grip. I was trapped, and in the suffocating silence I heard it. Not whispers this time. A voice, deep, ancient, everywhere at once. "Now, the darkness takes you." The symbols on the walls flared with blinding light, and the ground beneath me split open into a void so black it swallowed everything. The chair tilted, pulling me toward it. My body was dragged down deeper and deeper into the abyss. And as I fell, The laughter followed me, endless, unstoppable, until the darkness closed in completely. The fall seemed endless. My body tumbled through the void, chains rattling against my skin, the air rushing past me like a scream with no end. I tried to hold on to something, anything, but there was nothing, only blackness. And then suddenly, I landed. Not with the bone-crushing impact I expected, but gently, almost like the darkness itself had set me down. I opened my eyes and froze. I was back in my bedroom. The storm outside was gone. My lamp was on. The clock on my nightstand read 7 a.m. For a long moment. I just sat there, too afraid to move. Had it all been a dream? A nightmare so vivid it felt real? My hands trembled as I touched the sheets, the nightstand, the wall. Everything was normal. I laughed nervously, tears of relief stinging my eyes. It had to be a dream. Of course it was. None of it could have been real. But then, I saw the marks. Deep red grooves around my wrists and ankles, the places where the chains had bound me. My stomach dropped. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't over. It had been real. All of it. And as that realization hit me, I heard it again. Soft, gentle, coming from beneath my bed. We're still here. I stumbled backward, my body slamming into the wall. My heart pounded in my chest as I crouched low, staring at the gap beneath the bed frame. For a moment, it was silent, empty. Then, a hand. Gray, thin, those impossible fingers curling around the edge of the bed frame. I bolted out of my room, down the hall, through the front door, not daring to look back. The morning light hit my face, but it didn't bring comfort. The world outside was the same, yet everything felt wrong, different, changed. I never went back into that house. Not really. I moved through it like a stranger, never alone, never comfortable. And at night when the lights go out, I hear them. The whispers, the footsteps in the hall, the scratching at my door. Sometimes I catch glimpses of it, my reflection in the window when I know I'm alone, the tilt of a shadow that doesn't match mine. At every night, the same time, the same moment, 3:15 a.m., I wake up, always at 3:15. The storm never really ended. It just lives inside me now, waiting. I tried telling myself it was a nightmare, that I imagined the cavern, the chair, the figure that wore my face. But the scars on my skin tell a different story. The marks don't fade. They never will. Because the truth is, I never really came back. That thing, whatever it was, dragged me into its world. And though I walk through mine, I know I don't belong here anymore. I can feel it, like a shadow stitched to my soul. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the chains rattling faintly in the dark. Not around me, but waiting for me. Because one day, it will take me back. And when it does, I don't think I'll escape again. That's the truth that haunts me still. It's the truth I can't run from. It's the truth that will follow me until the end. The night everything changed. It's the night I stopped being mine.